Listen. So this was a movie that was available in so many formats. Like, some people saw it at this frame rate, that frame rate. Some people didn't see it at any frame rate, but it had an interesting premise. What happens when you take YouTuber Will Smith and have him fight a young Willie with a fresh cut? Then I learned that the people at Weta didn't go the easy route of using a Snapchat filter, but actually recreated and made a digital copy of Will Smith that was so detailed it captured the roots of his teeth.
Actually, to me, it's not the aging, it's recreate that character from zero up.
That's when I realized, yeah, Gemini Man ain't the name of the movie. It's the name of this cloning project. Let me explain.
This is not de-aging. This is not face replacement. What you see for Junior is a completely digital creation, 100% driven by Will Smith's performance capture.
So right off the bat, we didn't catch the high frame rate screening at first, like Ang Lee intended us to, so we had to sit back and actually enjoy and pay attention to the story that I really hope Ang Lee didn't intend us to.
I hope you believe it. I pray, please. And you like the story.
Pretty much, Will Smith has a killer dead shot that's made him one of the best assassins in the world, but now that he's getting older and he has 72 kills under his belt, he's thinking about retiring as he also starts to regret that number. Because, forget the first 71. Thing is, it really is just Will Smith playing a contract killer. Like, we're supposed to believe he's anguished, he's tormented, all these emotions that we know Will Smith can play. But here he's showing off his signature goofy smile more than John Krasinski did in The Office. He then meets up with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who's still sporting her sky-high powers and beauty here, as she's able to survive alongside the best assassin in the world, who's about to be assassinated by the other best assassin in the world, his 23-year-old clone.
People ask me, do I want to get rid of actors someday? That would no. Junior is 3-4 times more expensive than Will Smith. You don't have to worry about that for a very long time.
Now, I think the visual effects were good. Like, that's obviously what they're banking on here. If they didn't call so much attention to it, though, I think it wouldn't have as much scrutiny as, people are giving for a movie like The Irishman. But that's not to say that there aren't also moments where the quick motion doesn't really help it, or, the actor's just in a mask whenever the budget gets too high, or you actually see the stunt doubles blatantly front and center.
We got that.
Story-wise, it's not great. You've seen this done a bit better in other movies, but here it's clear the script was the thing they made the least copies of. At a point, they bring up the nature versus nurture debate, and there are a lot of great movies dealing with this subject that will leave you thinking about it for hours, if not weeks. Highly recommend those. Gemini Man ain't one of them. This story about the best assassins who never misses the mystery that goes behind stories dealing with that theme, considering their vastly different upbringings. You have one Will who in West Philadelphia he was born and raised, while the other was a test tube baby from Clive Owen's office. The old one would have had experiences the younger one never had and thus have a one-up, but the younger one is practically a Detroit robot whose emotions can be adjusted faster than you can the EQ on your Spotify. So he's not really looking back at his younger self, which I believe was a part of Benioff's late rewrites to the script. So that aspect fell flat for me, along with this entire lore of an organization who's been creating these clones, and then by the end of it, they just take one of the clones and enroll them in college. This is why I gotta mention the movie Oblivion, which I'm not saying is a great movie, but it has a better angle to this story, and where the doppelganger that Tom Cruise fights is at least the same age, so the action sequences make a little bit more sense. It's more balanced, knowing that this is already a man who wouldn't stop even when his ankle breaks.
Here he goes, and boom! Now.
I knew instantly he was broken, and I just run past camera. We got the shot. It's in the movie. That profile shot, both those shots are in the movie.
Maybe it was Jerry Bruckheimer's fault, since he seems to be directing behind the scenes more than he is producing, but it could also be another case of the new Lion King, where the main excuse for this movie is just so they can fund a tech demo. Weta created Junior, and yes, they did give it a name, and it wasn't Willie, by taking an exuberant amount of detail from Mr. Smith.
We set about in this film creating a fully digital version of Will Smith, both at 23 and also 50. We start with a 50-year-old because we have access to a 50-year-old Will Smith, so we go through a lot of effort trying to polish it up and do as many iterations on it as possible so we get that dialed in to perfection. From there, we then start to pull it down to the 23-year-old Will Smith using all the filmography from when he was around that age: Bad Boys, Independence Day, Men in Black, 6 Degrees of Separation, and Fresh Prince. So I was saying to somebody else, we get the joy of sitting there watching Will Smith films all day long every day. It's not the worst job in the world to have, but you take all that reference and you bend that 23 or the 50-year-old Will Smith down to 23, and you got to make sure it doesn't look like we just shaved his beard off it actually has to feel like he's genuinely younger.
So while the story is as memorable as whatever these two characters' names were, it's crazy to think that the technology for this project is bigger than the movie itself. Lion King created a literal virtual reality that hosts these hyper-realistic recreations of thousands of animals. Ang Lee, who's on the Hulk, who's recreated a tiger, has now replicated a person with one of the most iconic actors of our time.
People have memories of that time in my life. So you're not only trying to just capture the authenticity of the movement of a human, you're also trying to live up to people's memory and the images that they have in their mind.
Because instead of shooting it at the standard frame rate that we all know movies to be, Ang decided to take this up a bit. He didn't do it at 24 frames, he didn't even do it at the 48 frames per second that the Hobbit movies did, and those already added so much detail I thought I was looking at Legolas jump on the screen like this. No, this man went to a degree where only 14 theaters worldwide were able to play this movie at the 120 frames per second that he shot it at 4K in 3D. A bunch of those theaters ended up glitching because they couldn't handle it. Maybe Ang Lee is ahead of the times, but to me it just comes off so robotic. Like, I think going from 24 frames to 120 doesn't just strip away the cinematic quality of the movie. Yeah, it does make it look more, like a National Geographic reel, but I swear I can see the sound stages when you add that much detail. Sure, it makes it look like I'm on the set, but it also makes it look like I'm on the set. Yeah, 120 frames gives you so much information, you can almost touch it, but I could also feel the camera operator take his misstep because one of the ACs was behind, and you feel the fumes. Poor camera department didn't have the 24 frames per second motion blur to use as a crutch on the action scenes, so besides having to travel with 70 pounds of camera material, the 120 frames was capturing so much detail that you could see the choreography from the stunt coordinators. Costume designers were worried about their threading being captured on film, and they say that when you act on Broadway, right, you really have to emote for the stage, but when you act on film, since there's close-ups, it's all about the subtlety. Well, at 120 4K, you better become the person because that high frame rate cuts right through all of the movie magic. That said, if the whole frame rate thing still kind of confuses you as I'm talking about it right here, I highly recommend checking out this video by Filmmaker IQ, who breaks it down perfectly and really explains the difference in the formats and why they feel so jarring.
I'm going to drop the term right now for the first time. It looked like a characteristic soap opera fight.
Now, it said this project originally started as Disney trying to find a way to make a full CG human. Yeah, probably. But if you've watched this channel enough, you've heard us talk about the Congress, Jet Li's fight moves being digitally captured so they can be stored, and the fact that, yeah, we truly believe one day they'll have legit copies of actors on file to use.
Now there's a completely digital 23-year-old version of myself that I can make movies with now. Right? I was like, oh man, I'm going butt and gut on them. I'm going to get really fat and really overweight. I'm going to
go get that Gemini Man.
Get the Gemini Jr. Use the Gemini Jr.
This is something we're going to be seeing in more and more movies like we have. It's become a staple in the MCU. There's about a dozen just this year dealing with doppelgangers and younger self, so I can't imagine the overload we're about to get in 2020.
By the way, 10,000 years ago, language is technology. 100 years ago, oil painting is technology. Now we have those dots. That's technology. It depends on how you use it.
Having binged a lot of Ang Lee interviews for this video, he really keeps talking about how he wants to reinvent cinema and how we see it. Like, it's very clear that he didn't really care about the story. He just wanted an excuse to be able to use these very expensive cameras. And, I hate that I had to see the movie multiple times because of the story, but at least he was able to achieve what he wanted to, He's over here like those chefs at Aline that want to reconstruct how we perceive food to create an all-new experience.
First of all, who doesn't like balloons? The balloon embodies celebration. The symbol of the balloon itself is happiness. And to be able to eat that happiness is pretty amazing. And
while I appreciate the attempt that he took, in this case, Gemini came out rare.
But when you see a clone, you feel like, am I special? Do I have self-awareness, or am I just a piece of jade floating in the soup of universe?
These are big
What am
questions
I?
for an action movie.
I'm worthless. When I see a clone, if I see my clone, I feel worthless. Like, what the hell am I? I like to share that feeling through the action movie to the audience.
By the end of it, I still can't justify shooting a narrative feature film at such a high frame rate for budget reasons and just visually, but I will say that if Will Smith is ready to embrace his past and is ready to redefine his youth with the knowledge that he has now, then cast Jaden in that remake, but send him to Philly instead. Thank you guys for checking out this video. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Some other interesting stuff. Other people who, because this project was actually 20 years in the works, and they had like Harrison Ford, who we know Star Wars probably has dibs on his younger self. They wanted Arnold Schwarzenegger, but James Cameron owns his files. Tom Cruise, who I think refuses to believe he's aged. Nicolas Cage, I think, made too many different deals to be able to get this. Brad Pitt, I think is interesting because obviously they wouldn't be able to have him because I think his clone is also barred from China. It was weird to see Chris O'Donnell on the list because, like, I haven't seen Robin in a while, but it's just interesting hearing things about this movie, even though it's not that great of a movie. Aang, during this TIFF talk here, mentioned how the thing he chases the most is fear, highlighting a quote that's actually in the movie. But I thought it was interesting because a lot of people, miss the old Ang Lee movies, but, like, from his approach, he thinks making those movies is boring and making these action movies is more like, I don't know, he says he's chasing fear because back in the day he had broken English and was directing all of these English actors, and that was like the thing he was reaching for. And now the new fear is breaking through 120 frames per second, I guess. But it's interesting to see this new technology, even if it isn't for me. Curious to hear what you guys think about it, and where you think, like, what your pitch is for this technology, where it can work the best. Other than that, don't forget to let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And until next time, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe before your clone does.